Hello everyone, it's Mark Smith here and welcome back to Hobby Starter. Now many of you may have watched recently my introduction to Kumihimo demonstrations. Well, today is the follow-up. Now I've taught you all the basics. I've taught you how to thread your disc. I've shown you the threads and the tools of the trade. I've shown you how to wind on your bobbins, and I've shown you the fundamentals of an 8-warp braid. So today is where we take it to, in my opinion, not only the next level, but the best level. And this is where I'm going to show you how to start incorporating gemstones, seed beads, crystals, to turn your Kumihimo braids into the most wearable and beautiful jewellery that you can ever imagine. So what I've got in front of me here is just a range of the different types of bead that you can use for your Kumihimo. Now the only one stipulation I will make is that your beads, whatever size you go for, have to be less than between a 5 and 6 millimeter. Anything larger than that, A, the braid will become very heavy, and secondly, it becomes quite cumbersome to actually thread your beads onto your braid. So ideally, I would personally use a 4 millimeter bead or less. So what I've got in front of me are the perfect beads for your Kumihimoing. So we'll start from the left on the gemstones. So we've got clear quartz here, we've got a banded agate, hematite, which is a firm favourite of mine, and we've got these in a 4 millimeter round, or we've got a rondelle, which is a flattened round if you're new to jewellery making. Then we have a pink tiger's eye, one of my firm favourites. We've got some coated quartz. These are probably, I use these more than any. These are shell pearl, and these are 4 millimeter rounds. So as you can see, 4, 5, 6 millimeter, that's the perfect sizes if you want to do a gemstone braid. Then in front of me in the middle here, I've got some crystals. These are from the Czech Republic. These are Czech glass beads. So we've got 4 millimeter in rainbow colors, and then we've got 6 millimeter in a beige, a purple, and an AB coated. Then this is probably what I use more than anything. Now these are seed beads, so I'm just going to give you a little introduction into the seed beads that I use. So those of you who are new to seed beading, these are Mayuki. Now these are from Japan. They are absolutely perfect for your Kumihimo beading because every single bead is exactly the same size as the previous one from the tube. And also, the drill holes inside each and every bead are absolutely perfect for your getting your beading through. So the 3 sizes that I use more than any in my Kumihimo. Now this is the first. This is called an 11-0. And we've got a red, a blue, and a cream. Now I use the 11-0, the 8-0, and the 6-0. And the number denotes to the number of beads sat flat on your desk with the hole uppermost in an inch. So 8-0, 8 in an inch, 11, 11 in an inch, 6, 6 in an inch, okay? Now, if you're doing your beading, if you remember back to when we did the measurements for our braid in the first demonstrations, I mentioned that you should wrap the cord 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 times around your wrist or your neck, and that'll be long enough then to make your braid. You don't need to alter the length when you're beading, okay? Because the beading beads are so small, it won't actually use up any more cord than you're knotting. So I would just stick to the same length of cords that you've already chosen. So these are your 11-0s. Then we've got the next size up, which are your 8-0s. And again, there are so many different colors to match the colors of your cords or your designs or your patterns. And then these are the largest. These are your 6-0s. And as I've previously mentioned, there are 6 beads of these in an inch. So if you want to go onto the JewelleryMaker website, that's jewellerymaker.com, we'll have quite a varied range of seed bead shapes, sizes and colours there for you to choose from as well. They're very inexpensive, and you'll find that they do go a very long way. I mean, the 11-0s, for example, there's nearly 2,000 beads in each tube. So as you can imagine, they do go a very long way. So some of the pieces that I've got on my right here, I'm just going to quickly show you through the sizes that I've used. So this one here, I just put my specs on. So these here, I've used the 8-0 and the 8/0 beads here, and this is a spiral. Now when I come to do the demonstration in a moment, I'm going to be using 8/0s and 6/0s to get this type of effect. This one on my left, again, I have the 8s and the 6s. And just you can see by the way you position them on your disc, which we'll go over in a second, will denote to the type of patterns and the designs that you can make with your braid. Now if I go to my right here, the outside braid here, I'm actually mixing seed beads with crystals. So you can see that you can actually mix and match your mediums. You don't have to stick to all seed beads or all gemstones. You can actually mix the two together. Then the pink one on my right hand side here, it's not a very romantic name. I call it the spark plug necklace. This uses sizes that are actually graduated. There's not a gap. So as you can see, we go from the 8/0 into the 6/0, back into the 8/0, and it undulates in the different sizes and patternings. The next one along, this is probably the most vibrant Kumihimo necklace I've made. This was all about the rainbow for the wonderful work the NH nurses did through the pandemic. So we had a whole theme show all about rainbow. So this was our Kumihimo. And what I've done is I've made Kumihimo sections, then bare braid, then Kumihimo braid, Kumihimo, etc. So again, another way you can design your pieces. Now the piece on my right again is another spark plug style, and this is using, this time I've used 11/0s, 8/0s and 6/0s. So I've got 3 sizes of your seed bead in this pattern, so you get a really nice graduation of size. Now depending on the size of seed bead you use will denote to the size of the cord that you're going to use. So I'll come to that in a moment. Now we've shown you some necklaces where you can also make little bracelets as well. So this bracelet first here, I've used 11/0s and 8/0s to get the corkscrew pattern here, the lovely spiral. The central is again, it's part of the suite from the necklace I've just showed you here, which has got the crystals running through the center, as well as your 8s and your 6s. And then the 2 on the right, this was actually for a Halloween themed show, as you can probably see. So we've got gunmetal and a bright vivid orange here, again in your 8/0s and your 6/0s. And then the bottom one there is more of a sporadic pattern using the gunmetal, a beige and a beautiful sage green. So as I mentioned on the previous demonstration, the introduction to Kumihimo, I showed you how to set up your disc, how to set up your bobbins, and how to start and finish with the clasp endings. Okay, so today is all about the beading section of it. So what I've got here, I'll just bring the new board across. And we'll just briefly talk about the size of your thickness of cord for your different seed beads. So here I'm going to be using Eslon, which if you remember from my previous demonstration, I use Eslon more than any other cord. For me, it's got strength, it's got every single colour of the rainbow. There isn't a colour seed bead that you won't have an Eslon colour to match. And again, if you pop onto the JewelleryMaker website, jewellerymaker.com, you'll be able to see the entire range. Now, if you're going to be using 11/0 seed beads, remember that's the smallest of your 3 sizes, you will have to use a 0.5mm, purely because the 0.9mm cord won't go through the aperture in your size 11 bead. If you're using an 8/0 or a 6/0, which is the medium or the larger size, you can then use a 0.9mm cord. So it's only for your smaller beads or your smaller gemstone holes that you will need to go down to a smaller gauge of your cord. So I'm going to be showing you today how to do your beaded braid with an 8/0 and a 6/0. I'm going to be using an amazing green and a gold in your 6/0. So those are the 2 sizes. So I'm using an 8 and a 6, which means I can use your 0.9 cord, your thicker cord. And as I mentioned in the previous demonstrations, the thicker the cord, the quicker it takes to make the braid. So it's a win-win really. So the cord colours I've gone for is a navy blue and a sage green. And if you remember from the previous demonstration, I decided to go for a spiral. So one colour was at north and south, and the second colour was at east and west. And in that demonstration, I showed you how to thread your bobbins. So it's going to be slightly different today, adding our seed beads. So I've prepared 7 of the 8 bobbins. So I'm just going to splay them out so you can see the different layout. Now I want to stick with the spiral pattern. So I'm going to stick with north and south, east and west. So on north and south, which in this case is the sage green, I've gone for one colour of your seed bead. Now I've gone for the green. This is the 8/0 size, okay? So north and south, only the green. If we're going to look at east and west, because we're going to add a bit of spiral, I've gone for green and then the gold and then the green. As I'm doing the braid, I'll show you why I've come up with this specific combination. So for the first 3 green of each side, I'm just going to show you how the actual Kumihimo beaded braid starts to form. And then I'm going to show you how we go up in size to your 6/0. We'll do a little bit of the 6/0 braid, and then we're going to go down back into the 11 again. And as we're doing this, I'll explain to you the number of beads that you will need per bobbin to make your braid. So all you're going to do is before, and it's really important you do this before, is you take your cord, and this is the 0.9 in the navy blue, so this is the cord that has the green and the gold on. So all we're going to do, and you might find this quite useful, is just with a sharp pair of scissors, is go to the end of your cord and just snip at a 45-degree angle. And as you can see there, we've got a nice point. Now, if you wanted that point to be very, very strong, I would recommend just coating it in a few drops of clear nail varnish. Let it set for maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and then that'll be rigid and hard, and you can treat that then like a needle. So I'm just going to pop out some of my beads on my board. Now this is a beautiful green. This is called Seafoam Silver Lined. These seed beads have the most amazing names to them. And as you can see, we're just going to treat our cord as a needle, and you can see how easy the 0.9 slips onto the 8/0 seed beads quite easily. You'll get the odd bead that the hole will be slightly smaller, but you have so many in your tube that just pop it to one side and use it for another project. So I've gone for 3 of the green, 3 of the gold, and then 3 of the green. And that's purely for the demonstration, the number and combination of beads that I'm using. So 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to slide those down, and as we've previously shown you on the aforementioned demonstration, we're just going to take our cord around our bobbin, which we've opened, a single knot followed by another single knot, and that just locks everything into place. I'm going to cut our tail off ever so slightly. Now I've noticed that quite a few demonstrators with Kumihimo, when they get to this stage, they will actually thread their bobbin and they will place the beads inside the bobbin. But that means that when you come to do your braiding, every time you want to add a bead, you have to undo the bobbin, slide it out. And for me, it's got too complicated. So all I do is I thread my cord down onto the bobbin and make sure that all of my beads, if you look underneath the disc, you can see that they all hang freely and all of the beads are below the disc. Okay, so that's all ready to go. So I've got my disc set up, and I'll just do a quick couple of moves to remind you of how we do the Kumihimo braid. So do you remember, we've got north and south, east and west, and if we're following a spiral pattern, the colour at north matches the colour at south. We have 2 cords of each, and east and west are a different colour to get that spiral pattern. And the basic move is we take bottom left across the board to top left, top right, across the board to bottom right, and we turn to the left 90 degrees and we repeat. So bottom left across to top, top right across to bottom, 90-degree turn. And as I mentioned in the previous demonstration, depending on whether you're left-handed or right-handed will determine if you go clockwise or anti-clockwise. Whichever way you decide to go, you have to make sure that you follow that pattern, or all you're going to do, if you're alternating left, right, all you're going to be doing is you're going to be undoing the previous work that you've just spent time producing. So just make sure that you follow that rigid pattern. And as I said, if you refer back to the introduction to Kumihimo, we go through this in great detail on all of the moves. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that the beading starts with the groups of 9. Okay, now this is purely for demonstration. This isn't a pattern combination. I just want to show you how we actually do the actual joining of the beads. So what we're going to do, we're going to pretend that we were going to do a move. So I'm going to pick up bottom left, so exactly the same. And can you see that our blue cords are going across the board horizontally? That's really important. We're going to lift up our cord. Generally, we would take the cord across, but this time we're going to incorporate our beads. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the first bead and we're going to slide it down, and we want to hook it underneath the blue horizontal cord. So can you see that's hooked nice and neatly? So we can see that's hooked. Okay, so that's hooked under the blue horizontals. Then we take our cord across and pop it, so bottom left to top left, and we've hooked the bead in underneath the blue. So we're going to bring the top right across, so exactly the same. We're going to slide the bead down. We're going to hook it underneath the blue horizontal cord. So you can see seed beads are perfect because they've got this, they're not actually round, they're slightly rondelle-like, so they're slightly flattened. So the sides hook each other really well underneath those horizontal strands. Okay, we're going to put the cord back. We're going to turn the disc 90 degrees, exactly the same way. We're going to take our next cord. We're going to slide our bead down so it hooks underneath the horizontal. So it's always going to hook under the horizontal cord. Replace the cord back. We're going to pick up the cord. We're going to place the bead under. So you can see we've got the 4 hooked under there nice and neatly. Replace the cord, turn the disc. We're going to pick up our next bead, slide it down, hook it underneath. Then we take our cord across, and then we're going to pick up bottom top right, across, drop the bead into position. And you can already see now we've got this little nest of seed beads started to form in the center. So we're going to turn our disc 90 degrees. So we're now going to, again, pop underneath and across. Going to take our disc, take our next cord, so it's top right to bottom right, hook it underneath, replace the cord, turn to the left. Replace our bead. So as soon as you start making that little form and that nest in the center, it starts to build up actually rather quickly. And as I said, you're not using up any extra cord because you're doing exactly the same moves as you would have done. So again, we're going to slide our bead down and we're going to hook it underneath nice and tightly. Turn the disc. So you're doing exactly the same move that you would have done in the introduction, but all you're doing is you're just incorporating the bead into the center. So I'll continue with this, and then I will show you how we step up to the larger size of bead. So you can see already, if I just tilt it ever so slowly, you can already see that lovely group of beads formed in the center. It reminds me of little grapes sometimes, a little bunch of grapes on the inside. Okay, so we'll just turn the disc and then we'll do our next. And then again, as I mentioned in the previous demonstration, in the tutorial, if the postman knocks at the door or the telephone rings or you have to leave your Kumihimo, always make sure that you replace your disc with 3 cords in one position and 1 in the other, and then you already know when you come back to it that top right is the next one that you come back to. So we're just going to continue with this. Turn the disc. So it's always exactly the same, but all you're doing is you're just incorporating the beads. Going to slide the bead down. This is probably one of my favourite techniques of all, and you can come up with some beautiful patterns and combinations. And if you look at various search engines, you will definitely see there are thousands of different colour combinations and patterns. And as I mentioned on the previous tutorial, there are 32 slots, which means in effect you could use 32 cords and 32 beads, different colours. So you can imagine some of the patterns that you're going to produce. It's going to be phenomenal. So if I just tilt the disc, and I can show you just from those little beads, there we go, you can see inside here. So I'll quickly talk about bead sizes and cords. So this is your 8/0 bead. So if you want an inch of beaded cord, you will need to place, there we go, if I just turn it there. Yeah, so you will need to place, there we go. So that's probably about 2/3 of an inch, and on each of those cords has 3 beads. So if you want an inch of 8/0 beading, you need to have 4 beads per inch on each of your 8 cords. Okay, so there are 24 on here because I've used 3 beads on 8 of the cords. That's 24 beads, that's 2/3 of an inch. So if I show you, let's have a look. So this one, for example, this is a beaded bracelet that is solely 8/0s. This is solely 8/0s. So you can see that it's probably, so this is a 7-inch bracelet. So I've put 4 beads per inch. So 4 beads on each cord times 7 is 28. Now because it's a spiral, you'll need 28 beads of the silver on one colour, and 28 beads of another colour, of the second colour, on your second colour cord, and that'll continue with the spiral. Okay, so 8 times 28, 3 times, oh, that's quite a lot. so if we go for 20, yes, you'll probably need, so we're going to go for 8 times 4, 4 8s are 32, times 7, that's 210. It's about 250 beads to make a full bracelet. But in your tube of your 8/0s, you'll probably get about 1,1300. So you've got enough in one tube to make at least 3 7-inch bracelets. So seed beads are definitely cost effective if you're going to be making lots of these bracelets and necklaces. If you're using 11/0s, you need to put 8 per inch. And if you use 6/0s, you will need to put 3 per inch. Okay, so if you look back after you've watched the tutorial and just make a note of the different amounts. So 11/0s, you'll need 6. Your 8/0s, you will need 4. And your 6/0s, you will need 3 on each cord to produce an inch of your braid. Okay, so we've done our little section of 8/0s. So now we're going to move on to adding our second size. So as we mentioned, this is your 6/0, which I've got in the gold. You'll be surprised to know you don't do anything differently. We're going to pick up our cord, we're going to slide our bead down, and we're going to hook it under the center, so you can see that's hooked beautifully underneath the horizontal cord. So it's always hooked under the horizontal, never on the vertical. We're going to take our cord across, so that's bottom left to top left, then top right. We're going to slide our bead down. We're going to hook it underneath, as you can see. Okay, that's the second one hooked. So you can see it hooks beautifully. Replace our cord, turn our disc 90 degrees. Now we've gone back to, because we wanted a spiral, as I mentioned, I'm staying with the 8/0s on north and south. So I'm going to hook under. So now we've got 2 different sizes of bead. We've got an 8/0 sat next to a 6/0, and as you can see, they don't compromise each other, they sit there perfectly. Okay, so we're going to go top right to bottom right, hook underneath, turn our disc. So we're back to the gold now. So we're going to slide our gold down, hook it underneath. So you can see now that we have our 2 gold sat next to each other. That will form a spiral all the way around. And I'll show you the next little bit of spiral when we do a few more moves. So I'm going to replace the cord, top right, going to hook in, pull nice and tight, across, turn the disc. So once you get into the rhythm, it actually builds up quite quickly. It's going to go in, hook underneath, go across, pick up top right, go across, hook underneath, and pull across. Now back to the gold, R60. We're going to hook in, go across, take our top right, across, pull nice and tight. So when you look down, it looks a bit of a mess. But once you actually look from underneath and you can see the spiral actually happening, it does look beautiful. So we'll do a few more moves. I'll just use up the gold and I'll show you what the spiral looks like, and then we'll revert back to the 8/0. I always think with Kumihimo, and I think I mentioned this on the first tutorial, it probably takes more time to actually come up with a pattern, decide on the colour of the beads and the cord, and to set up the disc that it actually does to make your completed piece of jewellery. But it's worth taking the time just to plan carefully on the pattern that you decide to go for. So I'm going to go back in for the gold. I'm going to go across to the green. Hook across. So I would definitely recommend popping onto the JewelleryMaker website and just having a look at cord colours, seed bead sizes, and maybe just buy a tube of all three sizes. Get a tube of each, a 0.9 and a 0.4 or a 0.5 cord, and then you'll be well away and having a little practice and a little play. So I think I've added all my gold now. So if I flip the disc to the side, you can see that we've got that spiral. Can you see? So we've got the green intermittent with the gold running around the outside. So what we're going to do now is I've used all my gold beads, so I'm now reverting back to my green. So what this does, it actually pulls everything tighter as well, because we've gone from a small and a large bead to solely small bead. It tightens everything up and brings it back together. So if you were making a bracelet, obviously you'd have a lot more beads than I'm using here, and even more if you were doing a necklace. But what you'll have to decide now is whether you want a continuous spiral or whether you want to break the braided, beaded sections in what becomes the spark plug pieces that I showed you in the introduction. So again, there's so many different variations, and so I think Kumihimo, once you take it on as a hobby, it'll just keep you absolutely for hours and hours and hours. It'll keep you occupied, and it's such a therapeutic, simple little hobby. And because you can set this up before you go on your travels, whether that's on an aeroplane or a train journey, you don't need to take any tools with you. You can just sit down, relax for a couple of hours, and while away your time making your beautiful pieces of jewellery. So we'll just continue to slide these down. And again, so it's always the same combination, bottom left, top right, bottom right. So once you get that combination, and obviously I don't want to confuse you, but obviously you can have 12 cores, you can have 16, you can have the 32. So I may have to challenge myself one day to try a 32 braid just to see its outcome. I'm very intrigued. So we're just going to hook those underneath. Going to go across. Okay, so if I show you the top, so you can now see that we've gone from the spiral back to the plain green colour underneath. So I'll finish the green, I'll do a couple of moves with the braid, and then you'll see how it looks. So sometimes you'll notice that, can you see the little bead has popped into the bobbin there? There we go. So all you need to do is just push those out of the way and then reclose your bobbin nice and tight. So always be careful when you get to the end of your beads that you've not left a sneaky bead in the bobbin somewhere, because that could throw your pattern out. And Kumihimo, it doesn't hold any prisoners with a dropped bead. It will stand out quite prominently. So there's another one. So if I popped him out, there we go. So let's just pop him out. This one didn't want to come out. There we go. Go back in. Hook underneath. So I now know I'm getting near the end, because those are the last two beads on those two bobbins. And I'm going to turn around. I've got one left on this bobbin. It's always a lovely feeling when you can see your last bead coming to the end of your pattern. Put nice and tight. So I should have two this side. I have. So that's one across, hook it under, one on the other side, hook under, come across, and then I should have one left on this side if I've done things correctly. I have. So that's one bead in the top, and then there should be one. There we go. There it is. That's the last one. So I'm going to bring that across. And then what you do then is once you've finished your beading section, you obviously need a bit of your braid at the end to attach your clasp to, the finishing touches. So I'm going to do the same on this little bit here. So I'm just going to do a simple bit of braiding, and what you want to do, because the surface area around those last beads is larger than the braid, you just need to make sure that you pull nice and tight, and this will bring all of your cords nice and neatly together. And you probably only need to do maybe 6 to 8 moves, and you'll see your braid starting to form again. So you can see I probably did a couple of inches of beading there in a couple of minutes, so it won't take you very long at all. And as I said, it takes more time planning your design and your colours and your cord colours and filling up your bobbins than it does to make the piece of jewellery. So just going to go across, putting that nice and tight. So you can see you can get quite a speed after a while. And especially when you've done a beaded section, because the anticipation of what it looks like, taking it off your disc, it definitely makes you go a bit faster. You'll definitely notice that. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this through just so I can show you. I won't cut it off yet, but there we go. So there you can see we've got our bit of braid that we started with. Then we've got our basic green section. Then we've got our gold spiral, so you can see how that opens up and you have that spiral pattern. Then it reverts back to your 8/0 section, and then we have our braid. So what I do a lot on my pieces of work is I do a bead section, then I do 100 moves without a bead, then I start a beaded section, then 100 moves without, beaded section, moves without, and then after a while it will look, if I show you this necklace on the right, the rainbow necklace here. So can you see, I've got a very long piece of braid at the back which I used as a tie. That was probably 600 moves, and that will give you about 3 or 4 inches of your braid to enable you to tie together. Then I've done my section of beading, then I've done 100 moves without, then you have your beaded section, then you have your, we call it naked beading at this point. So you have your naked braid, then you go into your beaded section, then the section without the beads, and then you just repeat in a mirror image up the back onto the other side. So if you didn't want to use a lot of beads, you didn't want to do a lot of beading, but you still wanted the length of the necklace, then just have the gaps in between, or you just simply continue with your beaded pattern. So to get this as a constant bracelet or a constant necklace, you would have your 4 of your cores, so north and south with your green beads, east and west with your gold beads, and then you would just maybe strand 100 of each bead on each of your cores and just see what sort of length you get. If you find that you're doing your beading, you're running out of beads, but your necklace or bracelet isn't quite long enough, all you would do is you would revert back to your bobbin, you would unreel the cord from the bobbin, untie it, you would pop on more beads, and then you would simply reattach your cord back to your bobbin, and then you would have more. So don't be upset if you find that you've not put enough beads on to begin with, because you can always add them on later. The only issue would be that your cord wouldn't be long enough, because once you run out of cord, you can't do anything about it. So as I mentioned on the previous tutorial, make sure you have more cord than not. And what I tend to do is I maybe put 20 feet on a bobbin if I know I'm going to use the same colorway for another project. So that's your beaded Kumihimo, and as I've previously mentioned, all of the products that you've seen me demonstrate with are available on our website, which is JewelleryMaker.com, and you can watch JewelleryMaker live every day from 8 in the morning till 1 p.m. in lunchtime on Sky 674, Freeview 72. And if you scan the QR code that you can see on the screen onto your mobile phone, that will take you directly through to the Hobby Starter newsletter. And remember to also join the HobbyMaker Starter Group. All the information you can see is on the screen now. And yeah, so we've shown you how to set up your disc and the bobbins, we've shown you how to start and how to finish, we've now shown you how to bead. So the next thing to do is to actually get started, go on the website, I would definitely recommend getting a reel of 0.5 cord of your Eslon, your 0.9, and then one of each of the tubes in your 11/0, your 8/0 and your 6/0. And as you can see, just some of the pieces in the minimum of equipment you need. And other than that, you'll just need your findings and your clasp endings to finish and a pair of scissors, and that's all you need. So it's been an absolute joy joining you today, and thank you for watching, and I can't wait for you to delve into the world of braided Kumihimo.